Hey everybody, this is Sally Hendrick with Shout Your Cause. I've got Lori Grant with me. Hey Lori, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. We're waiting on a couple more people or maybe one more. And we're going to be talking about the book White Fragility today. There's a longer title. Do you have the whole title
I
by
do.
chance?
Why it's so hard for white people to talk about racism by
White,
Robin DiAngelo.
yeah, by Robin DiAngelo. I was going to bite off more than I could chew. I thought, oh, we'll just talk about this. And I got into it, and it was like, oh my goodness, this is really heavy stuff, and it's not easy to just absorb it all. Hey, Elaine, thanks for joining us. How you doing?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
Awesome.
Sorry for the technical difficulties earlier.
That's kind of how it goes. We just started anyway. All right, so we talked about talking about this book. We already had a discussion on the documentary 13th before. And is my internet going out, or is that Lori's going out?
I think Lori is acting funny.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll just keep talking. And we talked through that a couple of weeks ago, which was great. I had another discussion last week with a friend, with a family from home, and that went really well. Really enjoyed that. And there's Camille. She was on the live stream last week. Hey, Camille. And it looks like, okay, I see. Oh, there you go. You're back. Awesome.
I pushed the wrong button.
It is.
We're all having issues.
It's okay. It's okay. That's the way it goes.
Push the off button. There we go.
So going into this book, the other day I posted on my Facebook page and basically said I could pull out like 2 years worth of memes and post them on my page every single day and not run out of quotes from this book, because it was so thought-provoking. It's like unbelievable. Lori, why don't you go into what is it that you're doing with another group? Aren't you starting with another group that's going to talk about this?
So I'm involved in a racial justice action committee at a Unitarian church in the town I live in Littleton, Mass. And so we're reading the book and determining how to facilitate groups. We're going to do. So we're going to roll it out to our church, to all the congregants, and see how many. Hopefully, a lot. We'll start the book in the fall, and we'll break down the groups into 5 people, and we'll have 2 facilitators in each group, and we'll meet every other week, and we'll sort of break it down by a couple of chapters at a time, because we don't want to just read it and talk about it. Like, it's too much, and I'm sure you guys know, it's so much information, and you can read it and whip through it and not think about it.
Right.
But if you really read it and try to sort of absorb what's come up in it and see where your biases are and realize how many times you've used your white privilege without realizing that white privilege, it's pretty powerful. So that's how we're doing it. And it's still a challenge. Like, I mean, the whole concept of white fragility is it's overwhelming, and it's a good thing if you're willing to say, I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to have to keep doing that, and I'm still going to make mistakes, and I'm going to have to keep doing that.
Yeah, because it's the only way. You've got to painfully walk through it in order to have real change. And if you don't, then, which is one of the themes in the very beginning of the book, by the way. I took a lot of notes yesterday. Elaine, I know that you were talking about taking notes on things too, right? Did you read it recently this week, or what? Have you already? Is it fresh?
As far as I got through. I was telling you the other day when I was reading it that there was so much to highlight. there was, I mean, and it wasn't, I'm not someone usually, you know, when you're taught to highlight, you go to the meat. Sometimes you start at the beginning, you start at the end, and you pick a sentence, and then I was like, oh my God.
It was like a bite of meat at every paragraph or every.
Yeah, every paragraph.
Yeah.
So I had gotten, I got to like chapter 3. That's as far as I got.
Well, I went through and listened again yesterday as I was walking, and then I would stop and then type notes and then keep walking. I'm sure people were looking at me in the park like, what is that woman doing?
I'm sure you were very interesting to watch.
It's definitely a people watching moment for the people in the park. But it was so hot out that I felt like I was at least getting, you know, some kind of exercise and, you know, sweating. One of the things that the very first notes that I mentioned were denying our biases means that we won't do anything to examine them. So, and I see this a lot. People will say, I'm colorblind. And that basically it's kind of considered like an obtuse response because you're not acknowledging the experience of someone who is Black or has color or some other different experience in your life. And that was one of the things I wanted to kind of start with. Do you see that a lot with people, with white people basically saying, I'm colorblind, or I'm not prejudiced, I don't have any racism, I've never done this, my family didn't do this. But what's happening is that they're denying that our entire system that we live in, our societal system that we live in today, was built on the premise of separating people into different races. And granted, there was classism involved in that too, which is another theme. But what have you run into with people regarding this theme?
Well, I think I can speak to specifically. I have had, and more recently, it's interesting. I've had people say that outright, that they don't see color, and then, you know, not trying to be argumentative, but they're trying to totally dismiss the whole conversation. It's like that's an effort to shut down any dialogue. And then, you know, if there has been some history we've had with said individuals, I've sat there and said, when you say that, this is what you're saying. And they're like, oh, okay, I understand. And then they don't want to discuss it further at that point.
Right.
That's
that whole white fragility, right?
Yeah.
Like,
it's amazing. It's really a thing.
The whole concept of it is like so like obvious, right? It's like the fact that you're in complete denial, or you get defensive, or you cry, is white fragility. Like, you can't just say, oh my God, I realize I said that, I'm so sorry.
Now, you know, there was a part, I don't remember, I kind of skipped around. Is there a chapter in here? I think there's a chapter here that's called White Tears. Isn't there something about that in here? I don't know if that was in the index.
I don't recall.
I might be making, I've been known to make things up.
Mine's on Audible, so I can't see. I'm not holding up.
Chapter 11 says White Woman's Tears.
Yeah. Well,
I haven't gotten that far yet.
No, me neither. I just remembered, that caught my, I think that's one thing that I'm sitting there kind of the struggle with is I'm a very emotive person anyway. Like, it's easy for me in times of happiness and sadness, tears come. And so sometimes when I'm sitting here going, it's like, if tears come, I'm realizing that can be interpreted as if I'm trying to diffuse or redirect. And I can't blame anybody for saying it, but I know for me, I just cry at the drop of a dime, and to tell me not to cry is like telling me not to breathe. But
but I think, and I haven't gotten to that chapter, but I think what happens is, right, it's the I think like the Susan Cooper situation a few weeks ago, right? Like using your white privilege by crying to get what you want. Like, there's a difference between I'm feeling emotional and I'm crying, and you can own that, right? Like, you can say to somebody, it's not about the conversation. I cry really easily, so if I'm triggered, I might be crying. That doesn't mean I don't want to talk about the conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is, I do that. Yes.
So that's where part of our responsibility comes in as white people, is to say, you know, look, sometimes I might appear defensive, and you can call me out on it. And if I'm crying because I'm upset, doesn't mean I'm not willing to sit and listen to the conversation and taking it. Please don't take my tears as a way for you
to center it about me.
Yeah, like that's not what it's about. And so, like with everything in life, right? We have to be really honest. Like look at when I screw up and when I say something offensive, I'm gonna feel like shit.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna feel the greatest, and I'm gonna do my best not to react, but to listen. But that doesn't mean I'm gonna do it perfectly.
Yeah. Hold on. Someone's at my door. Oh, hold on.
So I think that's our biggest challenge is like, but the first couple of chapters, like with the individualism.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about it.
Yeah, that was another thing I've got here. It says individualism says that our fate is in our own hands, that we have the ability to create whatever we want in life for ourselves. And yet, without examining the same experience, the same work ethic, or the situations of our peers that each of us faces, we're already exuding bias. So as a white person, you know, when we say we have these opportunities and this is here in front of us, what we don't understand is that there is a system that is completely built around not being able to walk through that system with the same glasses on, the same viewpoint. It's very different. Right. The last thing that I had pulled up, which I think kind of works here, is that in the U.S., you've got the top 10 richest Americans are 100% white. Congress is 90% white. Governors are 96%. Top military advisors are 100%. The Freedom Caucus is 99%. White House cabinet is 91%. I mean, everything is like above 90% right. White. All the music, the news, the movies, the books we read, they're all decided pretty much by white people. Yeah. And even teachers are 82% white. College professors, 84%. And then the professional football owners are 97%. And I had to stop and type all those up because I thought that was really important to realize that, you know, when we go back to the system where Thomas Jefferson, what was that about him putting forth?
He wanted to figure out, to show reasons why Black people were inferior. So right. He hired scientists to find reasons why they were inferior, not if they were, but why they were.
Right. He didn't ask if, he asked why, and then put forth all of these, like everything was based on that. And it was set up so that, you know, at first you had most, you know, Europeans, excluding Polish, Italian, and Irish, the European culture, the people that had come over, they were considered white.
Right.
The Armenians actually stepped up and, oh, here comes somebody else. This is Capucine. Hey. How are you? Thanks for coming in.
Sorry I'm late. And my daughter might be showing up at my house at any moment. I apologize.
That's okay. We're talking about, we're in the middle of kind of talking about how like Armenians in, gosh, I don't remember if it was the 1700s or what. I think it was. Armenians actually stepped forth and said, we're white too, because they were being discriminated against at the time. And they actually went to court and took a scientist with them to testify that they were physically, they were Caucasian, biologically or whatever, and or genetically, I guess is what you call it. And so they proved it in court that they were to be considered white. And then later on, it was easier that if you assimilated into society as a white person, like you could be white passing.
Yeah.
Yes. Then over time, even the Poles and the Irish and the Italians were able to step up and basically be considered legally white.
Right.
Though biologically, or in our bodies, there is no difference. It's all genetics. It's no different to have white skin versus black skin than it is to have blue eyes versus green eyes or brown eyes.
Yeah, I find it fascinating, that basically, I mean, we've heard it and we've known it, but that race was a social construct, that the categories didn't exist. They were created. And that and it's just fascinating how even that worked. They grouped them into different groups. That's not even real.
Yeah, I saw a video on that too. I watched a TED talk. A gentleman did. Race is not real. Racism is.
Oh,
it was fascinating.
Yeah.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
So, Capucine, what are you? Were you able to read any of the book? Have you read it?
So I'm reading it by listening. I'm doing Audible. And which is funny because I'm actually, there was something you just said. Oh, you were talking about passing for white, and I'm looking on my laptop on Audible because I've forgotten the name. I think it's like The Other Half, but I'm reading a book of fiction, and it's about these twin sisters and how one is off living a life of like passing, and
I saw that.
And they come from a town. Hold on, I'll tell you the title in a second. But they come from a town called Mallard, and in Mallard, everybody's light skinned. Like you don't marry dark skinned and all of that. So so my point is, yes, I'm reading two books at the same time and trying to sort of understand all of that, because so I now have a problem with the word race. I'm like, please forgive my language, but we're not running a fucking race. Like I don't like the word anymore, because I'm like, if you cut us all open, do we not bleed the same color? Like, so that's where I am like trying to learn and understand, because we're just different on the outside, and it's bothersome. It is kind of funny that there are 4 white women having this conversation right now.
Well, we had a black woman that was going to be here, but she had to step out today. So hopefully we'll have some more in the future. I've been busy writing up a proposal that's due next week.
When will you find out how that's going?
Well, I've got to turn it in.
I was trying to remember. You gave the timeline. I couldn't remember how that was going.
It's due next Friday, and it's basically a social impact project that is very much about racial equality and helping with education, and it's like this community project where if within a community you have a preponderance of like one particular race or socioeconomic background or situation going on, but then you have literally 10 miles down the road a completely different one, to be able to go in to certain databases and find some sort of scoring system, which I've already kind of come up with, and then create partnerships between the communities, especially in places where, and this is literally happening today, about 10 years ago or so, the town where I grew up, there was another town nearby where a new school system was built, a public school system in the county. Granted, the county, is getting bigger or whatever, but a lot of the people who lived in my town actually abandoned the schools and moved into the district of the other schools. And so now the new schools are 90-something% white, and the old schools are 78 or something percent black. I've got the statistics. I can't remember exactly. I'm probably quoting it not exactly right. But it's like another modern day white flight situation that has happened in a small town in West Tennessee, in a small county. And so what, the project that I'm putting together is basically highlighting this situation and then developing a program of mentorship with the businesses and the citizens and, you know, the school children and so on and so forth. And it addresses all of these different aspects of people coming together, because there's still a lot of prejudices going on in the town. And for as much as people want to say, well, I haven't done this, or this isn't the way I feel, there's just as many more, and probably many, many more behind closed doors saying a lot of things. And then now today they're getting much braver and really being just open about it right online.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So,
and I think it's important to remember that as the race that's in power,
mm-hmm.
it is important that we're online talking about it and trying to change it, because we have to be the allies and the anti-racists, because without the support of white people, it's not going to change.
No, it's not going to be recognized as an issue.
Black people don't have the power to make it change.
No,
they don't have the power, like what you were saying, Sally, about where everybody, you know, ownership of
90%,
ownership of sports, and who's in the Senate, who's in the Congress, and that's just up that way, right? You're not talking about all your local representatives. So how many are white, you know, so it goes right through the whole system. And so that's why it's so important to get involved on a local level, so that you can start changing that. And if somebody isn't Black that's running for office, then you get better to make damn sure that the people that you're voting for really have a strong opinion about white supremacy and ending it, and not promoting it. And that means changing the way our education system works, changing the way our system works, and stop saying that redlining doesn't exist, and stop with the, you know, all that stuff. So it's really important to do that.
In the book, when you mentioned that, what was the last thing that you said?
Individualism I talked about.
Yes.
Yeah, but there was something else. Oh my goodness, what was it? I don't know. I do know that I read in here that she said that it is our responsibility as white people. We have to be the ones to push this movement, because if we're not there to push this movement and support others, Black people or other colors or whatever in this movement, it's done, because we do control everything, and that controls the narrative, whether we even know it or not. I mean, you have to really turn things around and kind of say, so what would it be like for you? Oh my goodness, where is it?
She uses the suffragettes.
Women's suffrage. Men had to help get that to happen
without men's giving us permission. And she used Jackie Robinson as an example in the baseball. Without white people allowing him to play in the league, it would not happen.
Yeah, and people say, like, oh, he was great, so he rose to the top. And it was like, there were many, many, many other great Black players. He was given permission. He was chosen to step up.
And I think that's also what I'm realizing with this stuff, and reading so far what I've read in the book, and then having even these little small roundtable discussions. I've never been one that's had a hard time talking. I can talk very easily, but being around other white people who are with the issue where I don't have to worry about pussyfooting around, and I can talk and I can hear and I can listen, I feel like that it's helping me to where I can engage with other white people and have these conversations. You know, you only learn by doing, and it's not to try to, by no means is it to take away the voice of, you know, people of color, the ones that are, you know, have been so, is it disenfranchised? Who've been so harmed and maligned over these years. But it's like, it seems like the folks who created the system have to be invested in its dismantling.
Yes.
You know?
Well, and also we have to be able to allow Black people not have to assimilate into the white experience. Black people use oh gosh, what is the code switching? Is that what
Oh
it's
yeah,
called?
code switching. Yeah.
Code switching to speak like a white person.
Yep.
Or they straighten their hair, or they do something different to assimilate into the white society, and that's like the acceptable way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's why they have the issues. Remember with the hair, like when women have had the issues where they've gone natural, or they've done dreads, or they've done braids, and there have been employers who have tried to take that away from them because they're not fitting in.
Right.
You know, whatever that means.
Oh, in Texas, they wouldn't let a kid graduate who had dreadlocks.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's coming out a lot more, right? Like they're basically saying, "Oh, you can't have your hair the way it grows."
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Can you imagine somebody saying, "Listen, your hair's straight and it has to be curly all the time. So you have to do something with it. And if you don't, you can't come to work. You can't go to school. You can't." I mean, just like and those are the ones that are really blatant.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that we see. And those are the terms, that it's really easy to go, that's so racist. It's all the subliminal stuff, what I call death by 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah.
It's stuff that's not, the in your face stuff. Like Martin Luther King wrote like some great letters from the letters from Birmingham jail.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of that stuff was brilliant, right? Because he talked about like what's killing him isn't the KKK. It's the silence of his supposedly white friends.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah.
And that stuff is like the stuff that like always like just tears at my heart. Like, oh my God, because we say we're on their side and then we're not. We're compliant.
You guys should watch.
Oh yeah, that's great.
What is it? She cut in.
Dear White People on
Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Didn't it first? It came out as a movie. I think I saw it at the Bell Court a couple of years back. I haven't seen the series, but yeah.
I miss the Bell Court right now.
So the irony is, a dear friend is actually in the series, but only as a little guest spot. And when that came out, it was like, oh yeah, I'll get to that. Oh yeah, I'll get to that. Yeah, I'll get to that. Now I'm like all in it, and I'm like, this is great. But it points to like how, how the white people respond. It's so like, right. It keeps just driving like the screw in. And one of them is like one of the girls wants to be in the, sort of driven, going places sorority. Mm-hmm. And so she straightens her hair. Like she has cute hair already, but she needs that hair. Like she's going to buy that hair and have that hair and look like that. Yep. Uh-huh. And then there's a scene with the guy that she's dating. So you should just go watch it. Watch it like for 30 minutes while you're eating lunch every day. I mean, whatever it is, like just take it in little doses, because it literally addresses all the things, including like guns being pulled and all that. Oh, by the way, while I still am talking, because my daughter could walk in, it's called The Vanishing Half is the book.
Vanishing Half.
The Vanishing Half. And it's about these twin sisters and sort of the like 60s or 70s, and it's about one coming back. But anyway, so it's just funny of how in general, I mean, there's a ton of stuff I could dig deep on, but like how all the work I'm doing now, it's like, Jesus, I've never done so much work in my life, because I was not a good student. I just wasn't, but I survived and passed, speaking of passing, like passed high school and college and got out, but is that all of the things? And I was, you talked about sort of the small things and how the microaggressions or whatever, you speak.
So and I think microaggressions is just a white fragility term.
Yeah. But no, like the Black people are using it as in, here is what you do, here are microaggressions. Right. They're using it too, so it's not.
No, I know, but I think they're using it because they can't say these are racist things you do. So now like they call it microaggressions so that we can handle it, because they're racist things that we do. And they've literally had to come up with a term that white people can deal with.
You will.
So the irony of that is, I sort of, when this was getting deep and loud, that I was like, all right, you guys, like, I'm, sort of thinking in my head, like, you need to figure out some ways that I can use to tell these people over here what your point is. So what you're saying is right. So I guess that's the way they came up with it. Cause I'm like, I need verbiage. I need help to tell
some sort of a script.
I need a script. Like, I need
marketing.
So
it's
marketing.
The other thing is, like, so the Unitarian Universalist Church, they had their General Assembly last weekend, and their whole focus over the next couple of years is going to be how to dismantle white supremacy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
Okay. Good luck with that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that's their goal. Not to do it in 2 years, but for the next 2 years of their planning.
Okay, that sounds
focusing on to work with their ministers and work with the community. That's their focus, like where they want to put their money and their energy in communities. But there was somebody that did a lecture, and I know Andy did this years ago with in psychology as well. Andy's my husband, sorry. And it was levels 1 through 5. So if you're a 1 being like an anti-racist that's adamant about getting out there and spreading the word and taking action, or a 2, which is you believe in it completely and you're doing a little, but you're not really all the way out there, but you're fully embraced in the fact that there's systemic racism and we have to make changes. 3 is somebody that's like on the cusp, not really doing anything, but is like, yeah, I kind of see that.
You mean a Methodist? Yeah.
and then 4 is someone who's really doesn't believe it, and 5 is an outright racist.
Right.
So they said a 1 should never try and have a conversation with a 5 about
right.
it, because it's a waste of time and energy. They said focus all your energies on 3s.
Yeah.
1s and 2s should be talking to 3s and 4s. Like 2s should be talking to 4s, 1 talking to 3s, and then let the 3s and the 4s talk to the 5, because they're going to have more. They're not going to get as irate. They're not going to get as frustrated because they don't have as much skin in the game, but they have a belief system, but they might be able to swing them. So that's sort of how they said, like for me to like have a conversation with like a full-on Trumpian who thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread and doesn't see how he's racist at all, I can't have that conversation because they're not going to believe anything I have to say.
Right.
So it's like, nope, take your energy and talk to a 3 who's like on the, like, and let that 3 talk to the 5.
Yeah, it was like, I was reading on page.
Concept.
Yeah, it's a great concept. You know, when they're kind of explaining here, it was in I've got the hardback book, and it was like page 12. I just thought it was interesting is, you know, basically the more fruitful form of engagement, how you have to word things and coming up with that script to make things more palatable, that instead of you like coming at the person saying they're racist, you talk about the system and you make it understand there's a system, so the people don't automatically take this as a personal front and get defensive. Talk about the system, they're like, oh, okay, well, yes, the system, and it's kind of more vague, and then you can see its more insidious nature, and then that's the way to kind of maybe sneak it in.
Right.
The right
as long as they, like, I have a she was a classmate when I was in energy medicine school, which I still can't even believe she was in energy medicine school. But anyway, she thinks the system's fair. She thinks that it's because they don't work hard enough.
Oh, God.
She doesn't think that there's an issue with the system. She thinks that was in the past, and it's not like that now, and it's a bunch of bull, and people make it up. And that's what I mean about when you have 5s that are in that range, like they don't buy that the system is corrupt and racist. How do you have a conversation about changing the system when they don't think the system's even a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like you listen to Trump. He's going to tell you that the system isn't a problem.
Then you say black people lying.
William Barr said systemic racism does not exist in the police department. And he said it's a phenomenon that it appears that black people get harassed more than white people.
Yeah, I just want
to not call it systemic racism.
I just want to know how many sentences Donald Trump's going to commute like he just did Roger Stone's.
Did he just do that today?
Mm-hmm. Do you see what I'm getting about the system?
Yeah.
Right.
So
how many?
Right. He can make sure that all the people that have committed crimes are going to get a pass.
Right. Well, because it's that whole I think she explained it. It was in chapter 2. I was just listening to it again.
Okay.
She was talking about the whole system being set up for the white person.
Absolutely.
And our experience with it. And so we can't, like what you were saying, Sally, we can't, like, trying to understand, like, as a white person, no matter what I do, I'm never going to understand what a black person's gone through. I can't. Like, I've never experienced it any more than they can experience what it's like as a white person. So when I say I trust the police, right? Like, if something happens to me in my house, I will call 911. Right? Because I trust that they will show up and help me. Right?
But that's not the case.
I know that that's not true for them. There was a time in my life I did not know that.
Yeah.
I assumed, even with the police brutality, I assumed that if somebody called 911, the police would come for them no matter what.
Watch Dear White People. You'll totally get it.
No, right, but you get, like, my experience was like, even though I knew that happened and I knew that there's racism within the police department, I still thought if they called 911, they would show up and help them. Like, they might not help them on the street all by themselves, but if they called 911, the police would come, right? And I know, like, I have a friend who said his house got broken into. He lived in New York. He's black. And his mom said, I'm going to call the police. And they were like, oh, please.
No.
And she's like, no, I'm calling. And she called 911. And I mean, she called and reported the burglary and everything. And he said it happened like 20 years ago. And he goes, yeah, she's still waiting for them to come.
Well, but you just said.
And I was just like, what are you talking? Like my whole, like, world, like, just like my head, like, blew up.
Exploded,
like,
yeah.
But you just said a minute ago, you said about, like, the problems with the system. That's why it's called systemic
racism.
Exactly. So, but you also said, okay, so let's take my father, for example. So my father is definitely not a 5, right? So he's somewhere between a 3 and the 4, probably more of the 4, but he does I understand them because I was dirt poor. Like, but you have to listen to the story because there's some level that you go, well, I get why you think that. So he was so poor that every night when he walked home with the black kid, so where he's from in the deep south in Geneva, there's basically a circle around the city to keep it from flooding, right? The levee. And so the black kid went inside the levee and went home, and Dad was from the other side of the tracks. And basically, as Dad puts it, he was what black people are called. He was the poor trash. And so he was made fun of. He was not well considered or whatever. And so for him, because his life was so hard that way, that he's like, well, I do understand, but that's just also a generational thing too. And the fact that, like, I kind of believe, or I tend to want to believe, that if my father were my age, or McKenna's age, my daughter, that he would be much more accepting in that regard. But to some degree, the generational thing is problematic.
Well, and I think that whole piece with white privilege and poverty is still a huge thing. I run into that all the time. I've worked for everything I've had. I didn't have anything. I was broke. They can't see beyond the fact that their skin color wasn't one of the obstacles they had to overcome. Right. They had to overcome all sorts of other things, and no one is denying that. Like I you know, like I didn't have, you know, I didn't have a lot as a teenager or anything like that. I was considered very poor, but I know that my skin color didn't prevent me from getting into college. My name did not prevent me from getting into college.
You know that now. You know that now. You didn't know that then.
Right.
And in the book, she said that poor and working class whites, this is back in history, stepped up to dominate Black people to create a sense of this upper classism so that they wouldn't feel so oppressed themselves. They stopped pushing against the richer white people because they had someone else to oppress.
Right, and that's what they do. They still push that, right?
Yeah.
Like you see the pictures, right, of the, I don't know if you've ever seen the cartoon of the super rich guy with a Black man and a working class white guy, right? Mm-hmm. And the rich guy there's a plate of 10 cookies, and the rich guy takes 9 of them and says to the white guy, make sure he doesn't get that one.
Wow.
Right? Wow. And so you watch like the elite, right? The super wealthy literally pit and they did it like the Blacks thought they were better than the Native Americans back in the day. Mm-hmm. When slavery first got abolished, it was then if you get rid of the Indians, the Native Americans, you'll have the land. Don't let them take it from you. So they created this whole, well, at least we're not the Indian, right? So, mm-hmm. And then like they do the same thing with poor white people. Well, at least you're not Black. You know, I mean, that's literally how they created all the systems. Like
all the cast, well, it's like it's just like what you're saying it was on, since I've got the book, it's page 19. It said the poor and working classes, if united across race, could have been a powerful force, but racial divisions have served to keep them from organizing against the owning class who profits from their labor. You know, it's just all designed, the people in power create the system in such a way to where they can retain the power.
Right. Mm-hmm. So like what's happening right now in the country was like the perfect storm, right? All the people got laid off.
Yeah.
And then George Floyd got murdered.
Yeah.
Right? And it was this perfect storm because white people were home to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, I know that white people protested in the 60s for civil rights and everything, but not to the level today. And it was so blatant, right? What happened, and everybody's broke, right? I shouldn't say everybody, but there's a huge percentage of people in the country right now that have no money, white and Black, and brown, right? So it is starting to cross all races, right? You're starting to see people come together, and there's a reason that people are terrified and they want those kids back in school and they want everything. They want everything to go back to normal so that the protesting will stop and the changes will stop, because the higher ups they're freaking scared.
See, that never occurred to me.
Yeah, like, everybody is leveled with this.
Right.
Yeah.
Never occurred to me because, you're following all this stuff on Facebook about don't make teachers, the people who are supposed to help the economy or whatever, they need to stay safe too. See, and I'm hearing my younger parent, with younger kids that are like losing their minds, and like they just their thing is kids need their mental health and socialization. I'm like, send the kid down the street to play with the other friend. Like they're not that far. Well, anyway, sorry, but it's for me that is what they are also. Yeah. I mean, I swear to y'all, my brain hurts for every time my brain goes.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Like light bulb.
Oh, like there is something that's going around. I don't know what it is, but it's about let me go back to the white flight.
Yeah.
Literally the subdivisions that were built.
Levittown.
And they were made.
Yes.
reason that the horses were allowed and stuff was because people had to agree that not only would they not sell one to a black person, that then they wouldn't resell it like it's in there now. The next generations were like, selling it. But
same
anyway,
effect. Mind blown.
I was like, what?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where was this?
Levittown. Levittown.
Yeah, so I'm from up north. So you help me. I'm in
Levittown.
I want to say, well, the person who, when I posted, I shared it on my Facebook page, and I forget now where I got it from, but it was I remember it being Levittown. I want to say that it was something, it felt like New York. The reason why I say that is because a person who commented about it, she's from New York, and she said, oh, I used to drive by there all the time as a kid, and I didn't even know. And so she was like, thank you for sharing this. So I feel like,
it was an all-white community, and they put it in the books that you couldn't sell to
in your mortgage paperwork, and it's still there now.
Still there?
Yeah, it's still there. It's still there. Levittown. I feel like it was pretty common. It was Levittown.
Surely there is a law that kind of goes over that. You would think.
Go ahead. What?
It was from the Atlantic, I think, and it was the racist housing policy that made your name. It's a lot of them. It wasn't just one.
Yeah, this was an example, right?
Yeah, but that is a lot of them. So the Atlantic has a story about it, but for reparations anyway. But the creation of the Federal Housing Administration, and how the FHA loans explicitly refused to back loans to black people or even other people who lived near black people. Yeah, it was all kinds of neighborhoods.
Well, because they call it redlining. They keep them, and then they gentrify the city, like a neighborhood block, and they price them out of where they were allowed to live, and you can't like. And I don't mean like where white people say they're allowed to live. I don't want to say that that's where they're allowed to live, but where white people have allowed for them to live. Yeah, I mean, it's
crazy,
scary how much.
And we didn't know. I mean, obviously we weren't alive then, but you're just like, I didn't know.
But it still goes on, right? I mean, it still goes on. That you see it in apartment buildings all the time, right?
Yeah.
They won't come right out and say it, but like these co-ops that you have to go get interviewed to go live in a building, it's like,
they talk about the redneck South and how horrible we are. Oh, I know that shit's happening. All sorts
of everywhere.
So the more that I learn about that, I'm like, oh wait, don't start with me, people, because like I got. Let me make sure that I say this out loud. I have made plenty of mistakes over the years, and some of which I am completely mortified. I mean, mortified.
Yeah.
And meaning I could never run for a political office now. I mean, Sally, we've kind of talked, but like one of the reasons probably why God is like, this is why you never became famous. You don't need and I'm mortified. And, but it's because until you know better, like when you know better, you can do better.
Yeah.
But
right.
You don't know until you know.
Right.
And I literally had my neighbor who just is a down white. He's a white Republican. And when he discovered one of my secrets that I was sharing kindly, and I'd already shared with like his in-laws who are, in their 60s, but we were having this great conversation just about their own business, like in the Midwest. And that was great. But then we moved physically, the whole like sort of group. And then the husband of my girlfriend, the neighbor, came out. And when he discovered my secrets, because I was sharing, he's like, oh my God, I don't ever want to hear another liberal ever come to me about blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, first of all, I never talk about politics anyway. So let's take that out of that. But I literally was like, I didn't know. I was 20 years old. I didn't know. I was still a child. Yes, at 20, you're still a child.
Frontal lobe development is 22, 23. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, but he just wouldn't let it go. And one of my friends, I was telling this story to, and I go, and he's a New Yorker, like he's from New York, but he's super Republican, and he even went to school, and she goes, don't say it, don't say Ivy League. I go, yes, he went to Brown. I mean, like, she was like, oh my God, I can't. I'm like, no, he just let me have it. And I'm like, how would I know? I'm from the South. I had zero clue. Like, until you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, I'm a big believer that, people change. Yeah. And when you can own your stuff and go, you know what, I may have said or done something that was awful, and now I know that what I did was awful, and I will never do that again.
And you learn and grow.
Well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're not supposed to say, like, none of us are perfect, and if we can't accept the flaws within ourselves so that we can move forward. If somebody else wants to just cling to something that you said or did, however, I don't know how old you are, however many years ago that you did that, and you have realized that it was inappropriate and you don't do that anymore, then that's on them for not letting it go.
Oh, and that I know. And back to the point about people can change. Here's a prime example. Think about parents with gay children or non-binary, all the things like, and I don't mean like our generation of like, oh, you already knew that. Okay, what else? You know what I mean? I'm talking about parents who are like, this is not.
Right. Well, there's still plenty of parents like that, even in our generation and younger.
Oh, there are still the stragglers, but for a good part of those parents, the ones who come around later going, once they realize that their child has been taken away from them, like meaning they've gone off and they've lost the child. And in order to get the child back, they have to learn to accept the child for whom they are. And like, that's a prime example. It happens all the time that people can change. And it's like, everybody can change. They have to be willing.
Yeah. And you have to acknowledge that your thought process wasn't good.
Oh, well, my dumbassness that was probably drunk and listened to a bunch of other older girls telling me what I was supposed to be doing. And it was fun and it was great. And oh my God, I'm a dumbass, but it's too late now.
Talking about perspective, just and being able to step away from it. I wanted to make sure that I brought up the bird cage analogy.
Yes. I highlighted that.
Yep. I wrote up so much on this, so I wanted to read that and just kind of finish up with that. If you stand close to a bird cage, looking at the bird through the wires gives you an unobstructed view. So like getting your face up close to the wires where you can see straight to the bird. And then you turn around and then you look at just one wire and all the other wires disappear from view because you're really focused in on the one wire. That wire is something that represents an obstacle or, just one obstacle, right? And you see that and you acknowledge that. But you look back at the bird and you wonder, why does the bird keep running around or jumping around in the cage? And why does it not try to, move out or get out? Because it could get back past this one wire if that's the only wire you see. So you have to step back and look at the entire situation, and you see the bird is in the cage and all of the wires that represent these obstacles in life are lined up in such a pattern that systemically they have created this barrier around this bird, and the bird cannot escape and cannot leave the cage. And that's what we're seeing. That whole interlock does not allow the bird to escape. And the individual understanding of one wire or two wires makes us believe that the bird can escape and get over these obstacles, but we're not looking at the entire situation. And that just wrapped it up so much for me.
Yeah.
What I was listening to. I had a few more notes after that, but that was one of the things that I thought, and that made me even think of like, well, what, the poem from Maya Angelou, I know why the caged bird sings, and it just made me think of this whole theme about a bird in a cage.
Man, yeah, it made me want to. I didn't do it yet, but since her name was Marilyn Fry, first time I've ever heard the name. I don't know anything about her, but just seeing that metaphor, I was like, I'm going to look her up and see what else she's written because that seemed like such a great metaphor.
Yeah.
And have you watched Robin DiAngelo's, I don't think it's actually a TED Talk, but it's like 18 minutes. So if you go into YouTube and Google Robin DiAngelo and Google, it's like an 18-minute talk, and it sort of sums up like a bunch of the stuff in the book. But one of the things, I don't think it says white fragility, but I think it's like why it's so difficult for white people to talk about race kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But she talks about, oh crap, I just lost my train of thought.
I think I watched it, but it had to be 2 weeks ago, and that feels like an eternity.
Oh, she talked about growing up and not ever having like a black professor or a black mentor, and realizing that she never thought of that, was never taught to think of that as being a loss.
Wow.
And I know it is a loss, because most of my mathematics professors in college were African.
Oh.
They were either Kenyan or Nigerian. And I had 3 of them that were African.
Yeah.
And they were brilliant.
You know, you just made me realize, Laura, when you were talking about that, it is a loss. Yeah. Because I've never, in all my matriculation through, I've never had an African American professor. My daughter, who's in middle school, I think it was in 6th grade or 7th grade, she had, I think it's a math instructor, and this African American woman was dynamic, was engaging, was on it, and she knew her shit and how she conveyed. And I remember being so, my daughter didn't quite get my excitement, but I was like, oh, this is, and it was just because she was just that good. Right. And I was just so happy that, well, at least my daughter is seeing someone that, I don't know, looks closer to her.
Role model position, because teachers are very much, they mold our children.
Yeah. Well, and they talk about, I don't know if it's in this book or if it was in something else, but they talk about the percentage of the dropout rate for black kids who have African and black teachers. The dropout rate, the percentage drops drastically. If they only have white teachers, the rate goes up and up and up. And if they have black teachers, the rate drops.
Wow.
That's amazing. Well, it makes sense. But like her story, when she shared it in the video, it was so powerful, because it was like no one ever taught her that we would be losing. And I know we did a conversation after the TED Talk on it, on the talk, and none we were all white people, and they were like, well, what do you think you lost out on? And I said, well, the sad thing is I have no idea what I lost out on. Yeah. Because I have no idea what culture I didn't grasp and learn about. I have no idea what heritage, what stories. I have no idea what intellect. I don't know anything that I lost out on. There could be a billion different things, but I have no idea what any of them are, because it was never I've never had that in my life.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so I mean, I feel like we could continue this for forever,
hours,
and ever, but my child's going to be here because her roommate's car was broken.
And we're about to wrap up now anyway.
Okay, I have to be mother, but thank you for this.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. And we'll schedule another one. I've got to get this proposal done, and I'll come back to the group and find out when we can get together again to discuss more chapters in the book. I do want to go ahead and listen to a few more, and then maybe make some notes and have us come back and discuss again. So I think we've got plenty of material to keep going. And if anybody has any movies or anything like that they want to drop in the group, please let us know, and so that we can all be sharing. Okay.
I sent you the thing on Levittown on your Facebook Messenger.
Okay. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, gals. See ya.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.